working on. Doesn't seem to. Maybe after update 1.2. Atari 2600 Plus versus an Actiplac Megamania. Actiplac is the name they gave to Activision labels that deteriorate like this over time. Megamania, which I believe was inspired by a game called Threshold by Online Systems, which also is inspired by an arcade game. I can't think of the name of it. Megamania, you're living a nightmare and food is attacking you. So it's well, lots of stuff, but food, these are hamburgers. It's one of those food games. Atari 2600 Plus versus an Actiplac Activision Keystone Kapers. Actiplac is how they describe how the labels get all messed up on Activision games over time. Ooh, Keystone Kapers. This is a dynamite game. Atari 2600 Plus versus Strawberry Shortcake. Strawberry Shortcake. That's a pretty good strawberry shortcake. Nice job, whoever did this on the 2600. Atari 2600 Plus testing Donkey Kong 7800. Donkey Kong 7800. Now, while this was probably the last version of Donkey Kong created for an Atari platform, it only has 3 levels, which is kind of sad, whereas the Atari 800 version has all 4. But it's nice to see a Donkey Kong game on the 7800 after 1984. Atari VCS Plus testing Ikari Warriors for the Atari 7800. Atari 2600 Plus, testing Scrapyard Dog for the Atari 7800. To be seated in here really well to work. This is one of the few 7800 games that I own as a color label. Most of them are black and white, cheaply done by Terminal Atari. This one actually is nice. Sometimes these 7800 games take a little time to load on the 2600 Plus, but this one's worth it. Probably the best platform game for the 7800 is also Tower Toppler. Atari 2600 Plus, testing Armor Ambush from M Network. Armor Ambush. M Network's answer to combat. But I believe there's a one-player game, and it's a little bit more elaborate. In combat, all the mazes had to look the same on both sides, but in Armor Ambush, it looks a little bit more like what you think of as a later battle game. Atari 2600 Plus, testing out Space Attack from M Network on the Atari 2600 Plus. And this is one I had to clean before it would work. Remember to clean with a little bit of rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip if they're not working, because these games are old and get dirty quickly. Space Attack. Atari VCS Plus with International Soccer from M Network tested on it. I don't know if any M Network games actually work. Let's find out. International Soccer. Better than Pele Soccer for the VCS, but still hard to pull off a soccer game on the Atari VCS. Atari 2600 Plus with Defender being played on it. Defender. So, well, this is a fairly decent translation of Defender for the Atari VCS. It has one major issue, is that the ship disappears when you fire. And in 1982, it just made it seem like after Pac-Man that the VCS really couldn't recreate arcade games. It wasn't until Miss Pac-Man came out in 1983, created by GCC, that it seemed like the VCS could actually recreate arcade games, but it was too little too late with the ColecoVision and the 5200 out. But I mean, if you look at it here, it doesn't look too bad. So, Atari VCS Plus. Or VCS. Did I say that? Have I been saying that? Uh-oh. Atari 2600 Plus. With Berzerk being tested on it. This is the original Berzerk, not the newly released Berzerk with the voices. Really plays a pretty good game of Berzerk, I gotta tell you. Look at those robots. Might look primitive to someone who started playing games later, but those look like the Berzerk robots. Those are cool. Atari 2600 Plus, testing Circus Atari. Circus Atari. It's a good game. I believe it uses the paddles, which I don't have hooked up right now, but one of these kind of very original Atari VCS games that when I think of the VCS from the 70s, I think of a game like Circus Atari. Atari 2600 Plus versus Realsports Football. Realsports Football. There's another football game for the VCS called Football. It's really not great. It's a fine little game, but it's not football. This is closer. Built to compete with Intellivision sports games. And I remember it plays a decent game of football. So that's cool. Atari 2600 Plus with Realsports Volleyball being tested on it. And I know this is just a great game, Realsports Volleyball. It really feels like volleyball. We grew up in a place where volleyball was the king sport. Even if you were a nerd in junior high, you were probably a better volleyball player than most people in the country. And I got this at that time when I was in junior high, and my brother and I used to play volleyball on it, and it actually felt like real volleyball. It's really a fun game, well done. Realsports Volleyball probably to me is the best real sports game. And look, it works fine. Of course it does. This is the type of game that 2600 Plus should play without a problem. Atari 2600 Plus with Star Raiders being tested on it. This is a Star Raiders where I only have the cart. I don't have the game box, and I don't have the controller or anything else. I have that someplace else. So when you find a Star Raiders at the store, it's kind of useless unless you have the controller to go with it. There it is. Great game. Atari 2600 Plus with a text label adventure cartridge being tested on it. There is no reason why this should work unless this card is dirty. This is the type of thing that the 2600 Plus should eat up for breakfast. Okay. A little bit longer to load than I thought it would, but it works. Atari 2600 Plus with Activision Skiing being tested on it. Skiing. The dynamite skiing game here. This is the type of game like Fishing Derby with Activision where the actual gameplay hasn't really been improved that much over the years. You can still play this and it's like just as good as any game ever was. That was like skiing or, like I said, fishing. There you go, skiing. Atari 2600 Plus with Activision Enduro being tested on it. Enduro. I remember this as being quite possibly one of the best Activision games ever as a driving game. Different terrains, night and daytime cycle. I think it rains. Just a really cool, well done game that gave some depth to what were otherwise very thin driving games at the time. Oh, it looks great. Okay, I cleaned the inside and the outside. If you can move it as much as I could, I'm going to try this again. If I don't break my joystick as I step on it by accident because it fell on the floor. Let's test this out. Ooh, ice hockey just needed to be cleaned. Atari 2600 Plus with the late era blue label Activision Boxing being tested on it. Boxing. Atari 2600 Plus with Grand Prix from Activision tested on it. This game in particular makes massively great use of the Atari VCS's ability to change colors per line. You can see that and how detailed the cars are. Look how detailed that car is. And that's because you can change colors every line for the sprite, and it makes it really cool. If it was going the other direction, it would be much harder to make a detailed car. Atari 2600 Plus with Activision Freeway tested on it. Woohoo! Freeway. It's a game where you can only move up and down, and you have a chicken. And it doesn't make sense until you think about that no one would actually try to probably run down a freeway and up it. They probably would just try to run across it. So I think that was the idea. Atari 2600 Plus with Demon Attack tested on it. Demon Attack. Probably one of the top Atari VCS games ever. I believe it's programmed by Rob Fulop. And Atari sued Imagic because they thought it was too close to Phoenix, which there's some validity to that. It does look very close, but it's a better game. Atari 2600 Plus with the Magic Firefighter tested on it. I don't know much about this game. I think I had it. I think I bought it for like $5 from a bin at KB Toy and Hobby in like 1984, but I don't actually remember playing it. Atari 2600 Plus with Imagic Star Voyager tested on it. Star Voyager. A little bit like Star Raiders. Atari 2600 Plus with Cosmic Ark tested on it. Cosmic Ark is the sequel to Atlantis. At the end of Atlantis, a little ship takes off and it turns out to be Cosmic Ark, and thank Gen X grown up for that little tidbit. Just cleaned with some rubbing alcohol, and let's try that again. Cleaning works, folks. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus Asteroids. Asteroids came out in 1981 for the Atari 2600, and I will say that it was the game that sold me on getting a 2600. I saw that box right there in the corner sitting in the case at a computer store named HW Computers, which is local to us. Went in there looking for computer games just because I was curious about computers, but I saw that Atari was going to have Asteroids, and I thought that that was amazing. Also, I saw Space Invaders and Missile Command in the case too, but Asteroids sold me, and that's why I was able to convince my dad to get a 2600 in 1981, and the rest is a VCS history. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus the original Breakout for the Atari 2600. Put it in the machine, turn it on, watch it start up. There should be absolutely no reason why this game doesn't work. But for a game like this that you may be used to the regular 4:3 aspect ratio, there is a switch on the back of the 2600 Plus that allows you to switch the aspect ratio. It's that switch right there. Allows you to switch it and switch it back. And then if you get your timing right on Breakout, you can have it the right aspect ratio. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus Midnight Magic, also once known as David's Midnight Magic for the computers. This is a pinball game. It's actually, for the 2600, it's the second pinball game that Atari made after Video Pinball. This is actually a third pinball game as well, out by a third-party company. But this is David's Midnight Magic, And when it came out in about, I'd say 1987, I thought it was spectacular and got it for the 2600 then. It wasn't as good as Nintendo Pinball, of course, but it was still a great game. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus Outlaw. Outlaw is one of my favorite Atari 2600 games, especially to play multiplayer. It's actually not a version of Atari's coin-op Outlaw, which is more of a light gun game. This is a game where two people shoot at each other. One of my favorite versions is when there is a destructible wagon that rolls between the two of you, and you can shoot each other and also shoot out parts of the wagon. This is a really, really, really fun game. Again, especially to play multiplayer. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus an original Gatefold Indy 500 cartridge. You notice that the Gatefold boxes open up, and there's a cartridge inside as well as the instructions. Put it into the 2600 Plus and turn it on. Now, if you find an Indy 500 cartridge or a box like this in the wild, unfortunately, you will not be able to play Indy 500 because Indy 500 should come with a bigger box that includes the driving controllers, which look like paddles but are not paddles, and they're used to steer cars. But this is what it looks like when it starts. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus an original Gatefold Combat from 1977. You'll notice that the box opens the Gatefold with the instructions and the cartridge inside. Take the cartridge out, put it into the 2600 Plus, turn it on, come back and watch. Combat is a combination of a few different games that Atari made before the 2600 came out. One is named Tank by Key Games, which is an Atari subsidiary, and the other is Jet Fighter. This is just Tank. You just shoot at each other as tanks. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus an original Gatefold Air Sea Battle. You'll notice that this box opens up like a Gatefold. This one actually is interesting because it was printed upside down, so the box and the instructions are upside down from the label. You pull the cartridge out, put it into the 2600 Plus, and turn it on. And while it's loading, I want to talk a little bit about these boxes. These original game boxes from Atari with the paintings on the front, some of them by Cliff's Bone, by other people as well. These were the stuff of our dreams. These were amazing. These stick in everybody's mind that played them back then because this was our link to what was on the screen. And they were incredible. So this is the new version of Berzerk Atari put out this year that has voices, and you can hear, if you listen closely, the voices do come. Get around this guy, I can't fire. So it works for the most part, but sometimes when the voices come when the screen blanks. You'll see the screen blank, which is cool, but sometimes the screen never returns when the screen blanks to give the voices. So it's cool that they're voices, but it doesn't always work on original hardware. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus a Gatefold copy of Video Olympics. Video Olympics is one of the first 8 or 9 Atari games that were made. You can see it opens up to show the cartridge and the instructions. Pull the cartridge out. It's got the yellow text on it that tells you what the games are. Put it into the 2600 Plus and turn it on. Video Olympics is essentially a compilation of about a dozen Atari or other companies' Pong coin-ops that came out before 1977, including Pong, Pong Doubles, Hockey Pong, Soccer Pong, etc. And it's not working in the 2600 Plus. Let's try to find out why. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus a Gatefold copy of Surround. This is one of the original Gatefolds of the first 8 or 9 Atari games. You can see it opens up, the game cartridge inside, take the cartridge out, put it into the 2600 Plus, and turn it on. Surround is an awesome multiplayer game to play head-to-head. It is essentially Tron Light Cycles. It's not the first version of this game that came out. There was one that preceded it in the arcade, not by Atari, but it certainly is one of the best original games for the Atari to play two people against one another. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus a original 1977 Gatefold edition of Street Racer. You see these original gatefolds. You would open up and pull the cartridge out from the inside. Put the box away. You stick the cartridge in the machine and turn it on. Street Racer has one of my favorite games on it called Number Cruncher. It's like the fourth game on it, and you drive and pick up numbers, and when I was a kid, I was fascinated by it. This is the Atari 2600 Plus versus a gatefold version of Blackjack from 1977. First release, you can see here, sold at Carl's for $19.99. It opens up like this. There's only 8 or so, maybe 9 Atari games that have gatefolds like this. You take the game out, stick it into the 2600 Plus, and turn it on. Now it is Blackjack, so I will say it's probably not that exciting when it comes up. But this is one of the first Atari 2600 games, and who could fault it for being simple? Atari 2600 Plus versus Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man. This version, Miss Pac-Man, came out in 1983, programmed by GCC for Atari, and it's heads and tails better than the version of Pac-Man that came out for the VCS just a year before. By the way, it used to be called the Atari VCS, and then they renamed it the 2600 when the 5200 came out, and a lot of people use those words and names interchangeably. Atari 2600 Plus versus Vanguard. Vanguard is one of the first scrolling shooters ever made, side-scrolling. It actually has a boss at the end and kind of an extra weapon because you can get invulnerability. This came out in 1982, one of the first games programmed by GCC for the Atari VCS, and it certainly is one of the better games as far as I'm concerned for the Atari 2600 especially.